Welcome back to Incubate Talent, where today we're going to be spotlighting the Alabama Science Festival, or STEAMFest, an annual science festival that this year will be held Saturday, November 2nd from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Orion Amphitheater right here in Huntsville, Alabama. STEAMFest is a wonderful event with many hands-on activities for kids, presentations, and leaders helping represent different industries and areas of STEAM, including the arts and music education. Past guests, the U.S. Space and Rocket Center, will be bringing their mobile planetarium. Some wonderful leaders will be joining us to help represent diverse fields of study and careers in STEAM, including paleontologist Dr. Scott Pearsons. For this episode, we're also going to learn a little bit about dinosaurs as we go on the road to Glen Rock, Wyoming, and visit the Paleon Museum, where there's a rich history of dinosaur discoveries and fossils. We've had the honor of joining Dr. Pearsons and his students at the College of Charleston on their multi-week dig, where they're in the process of uncovering a triceratops along with many other species and specimens. We got to learn about the use of technology for ground imaging, 3D printing, and drones that were being used for a master's thesis to map the area, mark past discoveries, and geological formations. Joining us first on Incubate Talent is the person helping make this journey and episode possible, Joe Iacuzzo, who helps lead STEAMFest and the Innovation for Education Foundation. Joe is one of the most passionate STEAM advocates I've had the pleasure of meeting. He's a paleontologist by trade, an informal educator who has helped create some amazing education programs over the years. We hope you enjoy this episode. Joe, we really appreciate you joining us and letting us join you on this journey up here to Wyoming. How about you just tell us a little bit about why we're here, and then we'll kind of go into a little bit more about yourself.
Well, it's a really exciting story because we will be bringing back some real dinosaur bones that will go on display in Huntsville very soon. They're very significant dinosaur bones. They're not just little bits and pieces. And I don't want to give too much away yet, but it's going to be an exciting opportunity for people to come and see some real dinosaur fossils, to learn about paleontology and geology, and most importantly, to help inspire young people to understand the scientific method, to excite them about learning about science and not necessarily becoming a paleontologist, right, but just understanding that science has a lot of different areas that you can study.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And so talk to me about the Innovation for Education Foundation. What are your core missions? And then, of course, we'll talk about the Alabama Science Festival.
Well, we founded the Innovation for Education Foundation specifically to help bring resources to teachers, to students, to families. And one of the best ways that we do that, we are part of a program through the MIT Museum, and it's called the Science Festival Alliance. And our foundation is the sponsor of the Alabama Science Festival, which this year will be the very last few days of October and the first weekend of November, when we'll be at the Orion Amphitheater on November 2nd for our main event, STEAMFest. And we have many dozens of local companies and organizations there. People come up from the coast. The Dauphin Island Sea Lab brings up marine biology and real hands-on things that you can do. Dr. Pearsons, who is the paleontologist for this museum, is always there in our Dinosaur Earth area. There's always a big line to get in and talk to him and learn about fossils and paleontology and dinosaurs. And we have some incredible pieces that we've brought there in the past. This year will be even better and more. And it's not just about dinosaurs. Huntsville, Redstone Arsenal has a rich history of paleontology. 13,000 years ago, we had saber-toothed cats, we had giant ground sloths, we had the earliest Paleo-Americans coming in there to evade the predators and hunt the herbivores. And it's just a really rich history in our community that we want to expose people to.
Yeah, you all are certainly bringing communities together, right? And as an observer, both of the Alabama Science Festival and the thought that you all put into it, I mean, it's great to see an ecosystem coming together and the industry that participates within the festival, just to bring different types of science, right, or different types of STEM to that. But like you mentioned, I mean, you've got the C Lab, you've got kind of a statewide reach and even beyond, right, in bringing things here to create that experience at that festival, and that's incredible.
Yeah, we even have the FBI coming in talking about forensic science, and a lot of students. Last year we had a middle school and 2 high schools there, and the students showcasing events and programs that they'd won prizes in for innovating and just doing some really amazing things that I couldn't imagine doing when I was that age.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And so let's talk about the students some, because one thing that I have learned being up here, and thank you again. I mean, it's created a spark even for me as a working professional and somebody who just cares deeply about STEM but is just interested in a lot of the different fields. I didn't know a lot about paleontology, and getting out there in the field and that hands-on experience is wonderful. Creating that for students is so important. But one of the other things I've learned from both you and Dr. Pearsons is the importance of paleontology in STEM, because it's just kids get exposure to it at such an early age. The books that they're going to have in early in life are probably going to have some kind of dinosaur theme to them. So just talk for a moment about the importance of this field and just your general message that you would have to students.
I've always been a dinosaur fanatic, and since I was little, because I read the Little Golden Book of Dinosaurs, and it's always just fascinated me. They were real life monsters, but you don't have to be afraid of them anymore because they're all gone. And there's certainly a fascination. I've had the privilege of working with a lot of prominent scientists in this field over nearly 30 years that I've been involved in this. And one of my first endeavors was I was hired by a university to market a huge dinosaur exhibition. And that's where I met a lot of scientists whose books I'd been reading over the years. And it led me to creating this magazine for children called Dinosaurs Illustrated. And a lot of scientists contributed to these because they understood the need to reach into the public and really understand, help people understand what the science was all about, what it entailed. But we all consider it in this field, it's the gateway science. It's the way that so many young people are introduced to the scientific method and how scientists think and observe and test and create hypotheses. And there's a rich history of paleontology that goes back to Thomas Jefferson. A lot of people don't know that Thomas Jefferson was a fossil fanatic, and he had bones all over the White House. One story, contemporaneous story, is told that he had 3 cartloads of fossil bones delivered that he scattered across the East Room floor. And here's President Jefferson crawling around on his hands and knees, sorting his fossils. And that collection is mostly at the Philadelphia Academy of Science now. And he sent Lewis and Clark out to their journey of discovery in 1803. And one of the things he told them was, find me some fossils. And because in that year they didn't really understand extinction, he asked them, if you can, bring me back a live mammoth. So, there is that. There were the great bone wars of the late 19th century.
Learned about that long. And it's fascinating.
It's incredible. Cowboys dynamiting, rival fossil hunters' dig sites, so they prevented them from getting the best and the biggest, which is a shame that some fossils were probably destroyed that way. But those people in the late 19th century filled up museums, not just in North America, but all over the world. And, there's so many stories to tell that touch on different areas of science. I was very privileged to work on the dinosaur mummy project from 2002 to 2008. And we utilized technology that had never been used in paleontology before. We had an entire body of a dinosaur that had mummified before it fossilized.
A dinosaur mummy.
Yep. And everything inside of it, when it died, was there when we found it. It was fossilized, though. So we had to use technology to look inside it. We didn't want to chop it up. So we used imaging technology, and we used cobalt-60 radiation sources to image it down at Johnson Space Center, Ellington Field, and all the NASA scientists would come around. There was a bunch of astronauts on base at the time, and all of our paleontologists are, astronauts, and the astronauts are, dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing. We did imaging, we did 3D modeling, which was not as invasive as it is now in the field. And we did some of the first 3D scanning and imaging of a dinosaur fossil. And then Ford Motor Company did the creation of the actual models from those scans.
That's fair. I greatly appreciate you sharing that, just in the connection back to it being a gateway science, but even just that connection between something that is often referred to as that analog, right? And having fossils and something tangible, but using technology to be able to do it. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Let's talk about your history a little bit. You are a fascinating guy. You've got a great history in this field, and obviously a deep passion for STEM education. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I grew up an only child in upstate New York, outside of Buffalo, and I was an avid reader. I would read 1 or 2 books a day usually, and mostly science fiction. I went to Arizona State University and got to see really going outdoors and always hunting for fossils. And we would find different types of fossils and different rock strata. I would begin to look into geology a little and say, okay, well, these are the rocks where I'm going to find brachiopods and from 300 million years ago. And up on the way to Kingman from Phoenix, there was a site where you found prehistoric camels and the earliest horses, three-toed horses before they had hooves. And they were really small too. You could fit a whole fossil in a slab this big of these little horses. And then I got involved with Arizona State to do this exhibition. I had been in marketing before that in the nonprofit world. We worked with Make-A-Wish and Child Help USA and United Way, and helping them do money-raising programs. And this magazine, after we did that, brought me to the attention of Universal Pictures, where I had the best job in the world. I got to work on the Jurassic Park 2 and 3 as a very minor science advisor, but I was in charge of the education outreach program that Steven Spielberg wanted to create to give back to education and to the science of paleontology that had helped make him so successful. And I got to meet scientists like Dr. Bacher, like Dr. Horner, and so many others. We had some grad students who were our Jurassic Park Institute rangers, one of whom is now the head of paleontology at the Carnegie Museum. And then that brought me from that to the attention of the folks who found the dinosaur mummy. And it just, we did a Discovery Channel documentary. Prior to that, I was a lobbyist. I kind of
those are two very different things. Two very different things.
I say that was the black spot on my soul that I have to atone for. But, it really let me understand the importance of communication skills. And, teaching is kind of an extension of that. If you're an effective communicator, you can be a great teacher.
Yeah.
Whether it's formally in a school or informally in a museum or in a seminar or through our science festivals. And so it really, all the various crazy things that I've done. I was a butcher. That's how I put myself through college. And it's really just, to me, finding your passion.
Yes. Yeah.
And pursuing it and understanding it from my perspective, always looking for a teaching opportunity. How can we
need more teachers?
Do something?
Yeah.
We actually, my wife Catherine and I founded a charter school, and we became an A+ school in large part because she was great as an educator and sharing her methodologies, and we sought out teachers who were effective communicators.
Well, so it's a great transition. Let's talk about the teachers, right? And even around your plans for the festival and the thought that you kind of put into that, I know some of that has been trying to create experiences for teachers. But so whether it's spotlighting those specific things that you're trying to create for teachers or the next generation, what would be kind of your central message around the Alabama STEM ecosystem that you would have for teachers?
Get involved. Let people know who you are, that you want resources for your classroom, that you want to figure out new ways to really engage with your kids. It's more important now than ever because there's so much distraction with social media and all the devices that children are using and that's where dinosaurs capture the attention of people. We created a program called Dinosaur Apocalypse, a climate change story, to talk about climate change. And the whole point was, let's use dinosaurs because kids are interested in that.
Yeah.
Then we teach them climate change. At Universal and the Jurassic Park Institute, we use dinosaurs to teach English language arts. We used them to teach math. We used them to teach other, non-paleontology science.
Talk about the history behind it too, right? There's a wonderful
there really is, it's unending.
Yeah.
We were sharing the story about how Charles Darwin missed by one day finding giant dinosaur fossils. And I mean, how would his perspective on the Origin of Species book been changed if he had come across a 6-foot-long leg bone?
I was about to say, what a conversation over dinner, because that wasn't just any site. Like it was some of the largest or the largest fossil that's ever been.
Yeah, they found 2 years after they found the really big one, which was Dreadnoughtus, they found an even bigger leg bone, an 8-foot one.
Wow.
And
only a day away from Charles Darwin.
Yeah, he stopped because they were running out of supplies, and he was concerned about safety for his people pulling these boats upriver.
Well, so let's continue on and talk about industry, right? And we've mentioned Huntsville and obviously the Alabama Science Festival and STEAMFest has been happening in Huntsville, and there's a very rich STEM community there. How important is it for industry to be there to make that happen?
Critically important. As both mayors, Battle and Finley, said in a video they were kind enough to create for the Science Festival, this is workforce development. Mm-hmm. This is helping create a local resource for businesses to find new employees, to expose them to the what happens if they choose a career in a specific field, whether it's, we have Northrop Grumman, we have Aerojet Rocketdyne, we have Lockheed, we have NASA. The universities are there to showcase the programs so that kids and young and adults can see what kind of programs are available for a specific career track, whether it's the College of Biology, College of Science. Auburn University they call it the Math Carnival. They were there talking about math careers. The FBI is there recruiting for, people to go into forensics. And so it really is important for businesses to both support us and participate and showcase what they can offer to people who follow that career track and pursue specific fields of science.
Yeah, we often call it just that career perspective, right? And creating that for students, creating it for teachers, right, so they can take it back into the classroom is really important. And tying it back to Dinosaurs too. I mean, you had mentioned Redstone Arsenal and kind of that partnership there. I didn't realize like a career path for a paleontologist. I was aware that geologists played a role in a lot of engineering trades, right, as we're going out and building structures in different places. But I guess the thought never occurred to me about military installations needing a lot of paleontologists because of the amount of land and things that they're probably uncovering.
Yeah, there are over 1,000 archaeological / paleontology sites on Redstone Arsenal. Wow. And a wonderful friend of the Science Festival is the base archaeologist, Ben Hochsbergen. And he actually also teaches at UAH, a class in archaeology. And it's remarkable, the material that they dig up. And the federal government dictates that every site where they're going to put up a new building or build something, they have to do an archaeological, paleontological study of the area, which is why they have so many sites. And some of these sites are not just from relatively recent history, but go back 14,000 years. They're finding Clovis points and Dalton points on the Arsenal grounds.
It's incredible. Incredible. So let's talk about the community, and we've already kind of painted this picture, right? Just whether we're talking about STEM ecosystems or around the community that you have really helping support the festival. How important is that? The involvement of museums and the industry partners. Talk to me a minute about local communities helping contribute, and then maybe what's your goal? What's your vision? The Alabama Science Festival in Alabama being statewide and bringing those communities together.
We really want to expand, and I am so excited to work with folks like you and some of the other people involved through the Alabama STEM Council programs, and the STEM ecosystem is critical. And one of the things that we really want to accomplish is identifying every science teacher and math teacher and lower grade teacher where they teach the whole spectrum of everything, and so they can understand the resources that we want to make available to them, that we can help for, providing to enrich students' learning experience. So, that's my goal, is that every teacher in the state of Alabama knows where to go to find when they want to have a question about, what's the biggest dinosaur. They can go to a website that will be a kind of a clearinghouse that will show other websites, like our Dinosaur Earth website, which was created specifically for paleontology, and it's connected to the alabamascience.org website, which talks more about just in general all the Science Festival stuff, and has archives of our videos and things that we've created as resources for teachers.
Well, and I just appreciate being able to tag along and help tell the stories and help maybe create some of those digital connections, because there are a lot of resources that are out there. You all and alabamascience.org, I mean, it's a wonderful site. There's been a lot of organizations that have contributed to educational content.
Yep.
And I mean, you're spot on. I mean, as you look geographically, not just across the state of Alabama, but in general, there's so many resources out there that just aren't connected well, that we need teachers to know about. We need students.
And that's not just a concern in Alabama. It's all over the country.
Certain.
Which is why the MIT Museum Initiative, Science Festival Alliance, we engage with over 50 different communities around North America. From Beakerhead, which is the Science Festival in Calgary, Canada, to the huge San Diego Science Festival, where they get over 100,000 people in one day at their main events. Atlanta has a very substantial 2-week-long science festival. So we're a small community compared to those places. And per capita, we have more participation, more people coming. And I think it's because of the unique nature of Huntsville and the surrounding communities like Madison and Scottsboro, and where people live and come to work. we get people from South Central Tennessee coming to our events because it really is a wonderful resource, and because we're free.
Yeah,
We are one of our critical elements of our mission is to reach into underserved communities, to showcase opportunities to people and children who might not always be as exposed as we certainly want them to be to what they can do and the opportunities that are out there for them.
And I think that there's an opportunity for us to spotlight those things through digital means. So a child elsewhere in the state, or even a teacher, can kind of see those resources and see those things. But even creating something tangible, the festival, and seeing that expand across different parts of the state, I think would be incredible.
One of our wonderful partners is the North Alabama Boys and Girls Club, and they have been always there, and they have 1,800 kids, and going to one of their locations and seeing these kids engaged in STEM learning and how excited they are, and one of our goals is to help bring more of them. There's 1,800 in there, and bring more of them to festival events. And as we grow outside of Festival Week, other events that we want to create with organizations like yours, and really have a year-round resource that people can learn all kinds of stuff.
I love that, Joe. I love that. So the question we ask everybody here, and you're obviously you've got your field of study and some things you're incredibly passionate about. What was that spark? You remember a time early in your childhood or just throughout your life that you think kind of led you not just down the path of paleontology, but just STEM in general?
Yes, I can identify it very precisely. When I was 6 years old, my dad worked for decades on the Railway Postal Service, and he rode the train from Buffalo to New York City. And when I was 6, he took me on my first train ride. I was enthralled by the engineering of a locomotive, but then he took me to the American Museum of Natural History in New York, and I just didn't want to leave. And that's why it's important for Huntsville and our surrounding communities to have a really great science museum. And that's something we're hoping to help create.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And the role that museums or those kind of spaces can play in creating that spark for kids or even adults is just it's powerful.
It's invaluable.
Yeah, it is. Joe, any final thoughts, things that you want to point out, dates for the festival?
November 2nd is our STEAMFest event at the Orion Amphitheater. It will be incredible this year. And then watch our website at alabamascience.org for other events that we integrate in throughout the week. We work with U.S. Space and Rocket Center. We'll be there at some of their, like the Observe the Moon Night. It's also in October. The Von Braun Astronomical Society will be up at their event up on Montesano. And just a lot of other different events and things that we put together that we invite everybody to come and participate in.
Please, everybody, look it up, follow. Incredibly important because you guys are doing some incredible work.
Thanks, Scott.
Joe, appreciate it.
All right.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Dr. Scott Pearsons, a paleontologist who is the head curator of the Mace Brown Museum of Natural History and assistant professor at the College of Charleston. Dr. Pearsons was gracious enough to invite us on his recent dig with his field school from the College of Charleston, where students spent a few weeks in Glen Rock, Wyoming, helping uncover Triceratops specimens, trackways of dinosaur footprints, and many other dig sites. All right, welcome back to Incubate Talent. And today we are in a very special location here in Glen Rock, Wyoming. And we have joining us an esteemed guest, Scott Pearsons. Scott, I appreciate you joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for hosting us and letting us join you here today. This has been an exciting day. I can imagine you are probably exhausted, both being out in the field and being filmed and many other things. But how about you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about where we are today?
Sure. So as you say, my name is Scott Pearsons. I am a museum curator at the Mace Brown Museum of Natural History at the College of Charleston, where I'm also a professor of paleontology and I'm a research curator right here at the Glen Rock Paleon Museum in Glen Rock, Wyoming.
This is a wonderful facility. I mean, flying in here and then driving through town, and it just, you would never know driving by, and you walk in here and look at this wonderful facility. Tell us a little bit about the history of it. How did this place come to be in Glen Rock, of all places?
Sure. So the Glen Rock Paleon Museum began from the big specimen that's behind us. That looming light brown skull belongs to a Triceratops specimen nicknamed Lady Stephanie. And Lady Stephanie was found just a few miles outside of town. It was found on local ranch territory. And following the discovery, the rancher had a choice to make. They could try to sell the skull on eBay or something like that. But instead, they opted to donate Lady Stephanie to the children of Glen Rock. It was with the idea of displaying this one dinosaur specimen that the entire museum came about. And now it's filled with dinosaurs from across the state. Yeah. The one in front of us is a great skeleton of Allosaurus. That's a great Jurassic carnivore. All the bones down there next to Lady Stephanie that are the same chocolate brown color, those are all from the Lance Formation, so those are ones that were found here locally. And then in between those two sets of fossils, we've also got some marine material that's pulled out from near the South Dakota border.
That's wonderful. And I mean, just observing you and your team on a dig today, tell us a little bit about that. What are some of the current projects that you all are working on?
Sure. So the big project we were tracking today, and the one that you got to see us actually jacket a specimen, that's another Triceratops specimen. That's the bird Triceratops. And it's a really big animal. The first piece of that Triceratops that was found was a section of the lower jaw, and it's absolutely enormous. It's one of the biggest Triceratops jaws I've seen. We're hoping to find more of the skeleton, and we are finding that. Now, we aren't getting a nice articulated series of bones, but we are finding consistently piece after piece after piece. It looks like that skeleton has been jumbled up, probably in a flood event. Other site that we've got very close to where we're finding the bones, we've also got a Triceratops trackway, a series of Triceratops footprints. And those are not so common. There are only a few other Triceratops trackways that are known. Some of the other projects we've got going, we've got a microsite excavation. Microsites are places that you don't go to if you're looking for a big, exciting skeleton for your fossil haul. But they are places you go to if you want to gain a good understanding for the local ecology, if you want to build up your prehistoric ecosystem, starting with the little things. At a microsite, you can find garfish scales and crocodile teeth and wee little mammal teeth and chunks of turtle shells on up to small elements from big animals. Oh, wow. So we can find Triceratops teeth. Mm-hmm. We can find adult Triceratops teeth. I mean, little tiny baby Triceratops teeth, hadrosaurs and raptors, and even the occasional Tyrannosaur. And then we've also got, you can see from the bird Triceratops scar, you can look across the hills and also see our big leaf site, where my students are making latex molds of these leaf impressions in the stone.
That's wonderful.
It's really weird. There are not very many places out there where you can see all these different kinds of fossil preservation in wonderful quality, so close to each other. Glen Rock's an extraordinary window into the final days of the age of dinosaurs here in North America.
I'd say, and I mean, really not far away from where we are today. You know, I think let's talk about the students. So you had a great team out there today, but it looks like you had just a mixture of your core team, maybe some graduate students, but also some undergrads. What does that look like for you whenever you're doing a dig and you're organizing students to come out? How does that happen? What kind of majors of students are actually taking part in this? Are they going down a paleontology path, or is it something else?
Sure. So we are actually running a field school program here. So this is an actual course that most of the students that you saw today are taking. And this is a requirement for the paleontology concentration, which is part of the geology major at the College of Charleston. Now, in addition to those enrolled students, we've also got 2 grad students, and I'm also assisted out there in the field by Rebecca Starkey, who's our collections manager at the Mace Brown Museum. And she's a recent graduate of that paleontology concentration program.
Wonderful.
And you also, I believe, met Juliet Riddle, who's a recent CFC alumnus, and she's working on a very exciting new nodosaur armored dinosaur specimen.
Talking with her specifically today, she was incredibly excited, and just, I guess, she helped uncover and just go through the process, and was even, within your environment here, helping clean it off. I'm sure that there's better terminology to use for that. But she was just explaining to me how excited she was to take it, from point A to point B, right? And be out there in the field, but also be the one responsible for helping do that.
Yeah, that's the thing that we try to do with this field school. So the students obviously get a grade for the course, but as part of their coursework, they're all assigned a specific research project. That could be a particular skeleton that's already in the museum's collection. That could be a specific field site that they're in charge of. And sometimes those students are able to carry that through. So beyond the field school, when they return to the College of Charleston, they can work on an independent study project. And in some cases, that can lead to presentations at science conferences. The white posters that are behind you there, one on the prehistoric turtle, one on the frill of torosaurs, those were made and presented at a GSA, a big geology conference, by 2 of our students. And in the case of Rebecca, work that she did on the wing of a pteranodon, flying reptile from the age of dinosaurs, that's in that case down there. That one was recently fully published in a peer-reviewed journal.
So getting these students excited, what kind of career paths? I mean, obviously you've had some that are really interested in the field and they're staying in it. Where else do you see these students go? What are they going off and doing after they complete this course?
Well, that really depends on the student and what their interests are. And again, students that are taking this field course are not all going to go on to a career in paleontology. Indeed, they don't all want to. That's okay. Paleontology is a hybrid of 2 disciplines. It's a hybrid of geology. It's a hybrid of biology.
It's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
The skills that you're learning out here in terms of basic comparative anatomy, those are applicable to a lot of medical fields. You can go on, you can teach anatomy. The geologic skills, learning to read the rocks, figuring out what a strack column is like, that can lead to a lot of careers in industry, in environmental consulting, things like that.
And adding perspective to kids' lives just about what a geology degree or paleontology and some of the employers that they're familiar with, right? Any insights into that? I mean, both being a professor, and an educator, but just helping add not just to a student's perspective, but even parents, and encouraging their kid if they have an interest in what kind of career opportunities might be there for them. Yeah. What would you say?
Paleontology is an incredible gateway science. When most kids first encounter the concepts of deep time, that is, the age of the earth getting down into millions and eventually into billions, when most kids encounter the concept of extinction, when most kids encounter the concept of evolution and how new species come about, it's in the context of learning about dinosaurs.
Certainly.
Dinosaurs can teach you a lot. They can, here in Wyoming, teach you how to read the rock unit, how to reconstruct ancient environments. They can teach you fundamentals of anatomy. They can force you to think about animal behavior. Dinosaurs are a great way to get kids hooked on a lifetime fascination with science. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go on, as you know, to be a scientist, but it means that you are science literate. And that means you are a good citizen, I would argue. You're able to understand really important scientific concepts that are increasingly going to have an impact on the quality of human life in Alabama, in the U.S., and the world at large.
And it's taught, this field is taught at a very early age. One thing that I'm learning is I'm learning from you all, and a lot of the STEM experts and teachers that we interview, you know, they often refer to that 7th, 8th grade time frame as kind of being the pivot point for a student really getting interested in STEM. The interesting thing about paleontology and dinosaurs is, it's like even talking to Tim earlier, speaking to a 2nd grade class, right? And I think you're right, that gateway, there is an opportunity, right, to really help connect them with science at a very young age, right? And they're interested in it, and that's so important.
Yeah, and one of the great things about dinosaurs is they spark a lot of curiosity. When you look at a dinosaur, kids want to know, how did it live? Not just simple questions of what did it eat? How did it kill it? Was it the biggest one? They want to pretend to be that dinosaur. That means they want to put themselves in the mind of that critter and visualize the world around it. And not just making stuff up, but actually get to what it really would be like.
Mm-hmm. So let's move on and talk a little bit about teachers.
Okay.
What would you say? I mean, as a teacher yourself, and we're talking about this gateway of science into paleontology, what would be a message that you would have for other teachers, not just those that are well versed in their field and currently out there doing it, but maybe an aspiring teacher and wanting to get into this field?
Sure. I would say that someone that's interested in incorporating dinosaurs into the classroom, just reminding them how easy that is. If you want to teach kids physics, you can teach them biomechanics. You can talk about how, for a tyrannosaur, you can think about how it moves its legs relative to a duck-billed dinosaur.
Yeah. Okay.
A tyrannosaur has got a big muscle attachment for the great big muscle in the tail that actually powers the leg that's positioned very, very high up. Okay? That means a very short contraction of that muscle swings the leg through a wide arc. A duck-billed dinosaur has got the same muscle positioned far down on the leg. That means it can only swing its leg through a shorter arc, but it gives it greater leverage. It gives it superior mechanical advantage. Duck-billed dinosaurs are built for endurance, walking, and jogging. The Tyrannosaur has got a faster sprint speed. If you want to teach kids about basic biochemistry or geochemistry, you can think about how to interpret. You can pose them the question of, is Jurassic Park lying to you when it puts Tyrannosaurus in a Hawaiian rainforest? The answer, by the way, is yes, absolutely. If you dig up Tyrannosaur bones, you will find them in an environment in rock layers that often record very dark, shaly mudstones. If you look at the associated fossils, you will find garfish scales and pond turtle bits. And the dark color there is caused by an anoxic environment. That's the story of a swampy habitat. If you want to do Jurassic Park, you don't set it in Hawaii or off the coast of Costa Rica. You go to a modern, swampy, wet forest. You go to Alabama.
And I think that will be part of this journey, right? Is explaining some of the wonderful work happening here and what may come back to Alabama, which we're very, very fortunate to be able to tell that story.
Yes.
Continuing the story, we talk about STEM, we talk about STEAM and the arts, and even as I'm sitting here looking at different portraits, and you know, you're talking about accurately representing the environment that a dinosaur was in. Mm-hmm. And I think I've seen so many murals and depictions and things where it's fascinating to me how much thought and accuracy is going into not just those pictures, but tying it back to the evidence that you all are seeing in the field as you're uncovering these things. Help just a listener understand that thought process.
Yeah, so I would actually argue that paleo art, the subdivision of art, which is accurately reconstructing prehistoric life, is really the final step in the scientific process. I can wax to you about fascination with the broader evolutionary process and how important it is to understand prehistoric extinctions so we better understand modern ones. And that's all true. But the bottom line is all dinosaur paleontologists out there at our core want to be time travelers. We want to go back in time and see these incredible critters and this incredible ecosystem. And we can't quite do that. The fossil record is a pretty good time machine. It gives you more than just a single moment. It gives you this great time averaged slice. But what we would all like to do is do a better and better job of accurately imagining the world of dinosaurs, of time traveling in your head. And that's what paleo art does. It summarizes all the available evidence as well as well-founded speculation. You want to think about what color the Allosaurus is in front of us. You say, okay, it's a carnivore. That probably means it's camouflaged. Well, what's the environment that's camouflaged for? It's a savanna-like environment back in the Morrison. Okay, maybe a brown, maybe a tawny allosaur, maybe with some color patterns like we see on modern predators to break up the outline. Allosaurus, though, if you want to add some color to it, maybe you add some color in those lacrimal crests there. What's their function? It's not for ramming and stabbing at the sauropod dinosaur. That would be suicide. The crests are quite fragile. They'll break apart. We see today a lot of modern-day critters that have got head ornamentation. Use them as sexual display structures, and frequently, if an animal's going to have color, it's going to be on those structures that are already there to be visual. I think it's good paleo art, if you want to make your dinosaur colorful, to add red or blue or purple to the face of the allosaur at that spot.
Well, and it's important, not just in tying arts to paleontology, but I mean, again, just the thought and the accuracy that is going into this type of work. It is really incredible. Speaking of thought and accuracy, take listeners through the process that we saw today. So you all had gone through the process of actually, uncovering a fossil, and you're preparing it to be extracted, right? But the casting process and all of that, talk with us for just a moment about what exactly we saw today.
So the site we were working at, the Burr Triceratops Quarry, was a site that I'd found several years ago, and I found it in the standard way, which is I was doing the paleontological shuffle. I was getting down very, very low and looking not for great big elements, but for tiny fragments of bone. You find a little bit here, and then you look up here and you see a little bit more. You follow this breadcrumb of fossils up until you find the spot where they're eroding out of the hillside, because that's what you want. You don't want a great big skeleton sitting out on the surface, because out here in Wyoming, if the bone's on the surface, it'll be blasted to bits by erosion. It'll just be a fossil smear. But we found a little bit sticking out, dug in a little bit more. That bit led to a larger element, dug in more and found more and more bones associated with it. Now, the point that you were there for was when we had an ulna, that's the big bone in the lower arm, and dinosaurs have got the same basic bones in their skeleton that you've got in yours. Evolution very seldomly invents a new bone. It modifies existing ones or else duplicates ones that are already there. So we found this Triceratops ulna, and we had students had trenched around it, meaning they put it on this pedestal of earth. They dug and dug and dug and dug and dug around it on all sides, so it's just sitting there on the sediment that's directly below it. Then we covered it up in aluminum foil as though it were a giant baked potato on the top layer, and that foil was there to protect it from the next stage in the jacketing process, which was to take strips of burlap cloth that we've soaked in plaster of Paris solution, and then we laid that over top of the aluminum foil jacket. And right now, that plaster jacket is hardening in the field. When we go back there tomorrow, it'll be nice and solid. It's really the same technique, right? A doctor would use to make a cast around a broken arm while it heals. That'll be stiff and firm. We will then flip it over off of its pedestal, and then we should be able to carry the fully plastered bone back here to the lab. And it's actually here in the lab, and the Paleon has a wonderful, wonderful prep lab.
Yes.
It's
wonderful. Yeah.
It's staffed by a group of individuals that are affectionately referred to as the Bone Biddies. They're a group of elderly ladies from the community that form the equivalent of a sewing circle around picking at dinosaur bones. They will snip away the plaster jacket and begin the process of very, very carefully removing the rocky matrix that is still clinging to the fossil bones. And it's usually the case that for every hour you spend out in the field excavating a dinosaur, at least 3 times that amount of work goes into preparing them back in the lab.
Really? Well, I mean, just observing today, it seemed like a fairly painstaking process, arguably therapeutic as well, right? And somewhat relaxing going through and doing it. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredible room, and just kind of, again, goes to show the thought, that really has to go into it. And so I'm curious, like even the specimens we have behind us, are these real fossils? Are they cast, a mixture? Or?
So yes, most of the specimens you see behind you are all real fossils. They're all, in that case, real fossils from a long neck or sauropod dinosaur. The only exception is the skull. The actual skull, which is in multiple pieces, the skull is composed of several bones, is too fragile to be put out on display in that particular spot. So that's back in museum collections. That one is a cast. But all the other elements that are there, those are the real deal.
That's incredible to think that there are, tens of millions of, years of history behind us here, at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for those, you're looking at an animal that's easily 150 million years old.
So Jurassic and beyond. Wow. So what was the term you had for the elderly ladies that are coming in?
The Bone Biddies.
The Bone Biddies. I get a sense of community from that. It sounds like you have folks from the community that are helping contribute to the museum and to your mission. Let's talk about that. I mean, how can communities help get further engaged in paleontology? Obviously, we're going to have you down, hopefully, for STEAMFest. That sense of community and camaraderie is so incredibly important. Talk about the importance of that, successes that maybe you're having here, and how that could be transplanted elsewhere.
Sure. In most communities, there are people that are really curious about fossils. At my museum, I'm always getting a stream of people who sheepishly have got a shoebox filled with specimens that they've collected. And they really want you to look at them. They want you to help them identify them. And often they're very excited to let you know where they came from. And they want to know if there's more there. Some of the biggest discoveries in paleontology have not been made by professional paleontologists with PhDs. They've been made by amateur fossil hunters, by curious individuals. This is Wyoming. The work that's being done here could not happen without volunteers from the community, without the cooperation of the ranchers who allow us out on the land in order to excavate, the bone biddies from the community who work on it, and the community leaders who help to support the museum here. Now, you've got lots of great fossils in Alabama. You've got to have the interest there to learn about the specimens, and I bet it won't be hard for an Alabama museum to begin a preparation program that allows people from the community to come in, not just to show you what they found, but to work on specimens that are being brought in from the field, be them local specimens or specimens from afar. And that is really something that even big museums are reliant on.
The thought of a fossil coming from a place like Wyoming to Huntsville is obviously incredible. But the thought of other sources locally from the community and people bringing those in, I don't know that Alabama is going to be quite to the scale as Wyoming is, but I look forward to that being able to happen. So the last question I have, we ask everybody, what was that spark for you? Was there a moment in your childhood that you kind of look back on that, it doesn't even have to be, oh, hey, I'm going to go down the route of paleontology. Maybe it was, but just a STEM field in general. Was there some moment, experience, mentors,
Sure.
What was that spark for you as a young kid?
Well, I'm told that I've wanted to be a paleontologist since I was 2.5 years old. I can actually remember that far back. So I've literally wanted to be one since I can remember. But the story goes that my father went on a business trip to Las Vegas, a legitimate business trip. And not being a gambling guy, he didn't go to the casinos or anything like that. Instead, he went to a natural history museum. And after he went through the exhibits, as in all museums, he was forced to exit through the gift shop.
Yeah.
You got it. And there he found a very small paperback storybook entitled The Big Little Dinosaur, because the main character was a baby, long-necked dinosaur. And I had him read me that story and read me that story again and again. And from there, I was hooked.
That was it. And interesting tie back, too, that it was a book that you had at a very young age helping connect you to science.
Absolutely.
That is great. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that with us and for being such a gracious host. I mean, this is a wonderful facility, taking us out into the field. I do hope to exit through the gift shop and get a T-shirt while I'm here as well. So, Scott, thank you. Thank you so much for hosting us, for having us.
My pleasure.
It's great.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Last up, we have Juliet Riddle, a research and teaching assistant from the College of Charleston, who's going to share her story about her research, areas of interest, and is a great example to the other students out there that your pathway through education and career is never a straight line. Juliet helps give us a behind-the-scenes look at the lab in the Paleon Museum, where fossil research and preparation happens. We love being able to share the stories from the perspectives of teachers and students, especially when those students are also on a path to becoming a teacher themselves. Juliet.
Hi, it's a pleasure.
So you are a paleontologist by trade, teaching assistant at the College of Charleston. Tell us a little bit about yourself, but also just, I guess, your journey, because I think it's fascinating, but tell us a little bit about your story and how you got where you are today.
Well, I am a very recent graduate of the College of Charleston. I just finished this May. I have a BA in Classics and a BS in Geology.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And I am out here right now in Glen Rock, Wyoming, working with Dr. Pearsons on a paleontological expedition to dig up some dinosaurs. And I'm also doing my own research on the Lord Clive nodosaur, which is a big armored dinosaur specimen that we're still working on pulling out of the hill. And then I'm assisting him with running the field school while I'm out here.
That's great.
While I was still at the College of Charleston, I had the opportunity to come out here twice before, once in my own field school course requirement, and then again as an independent research trip last summer. And I loved it, and I wanted to keep doing it. And so here I am.
That's great. And so you've transitioned a bit from being the student to being the teacher. There's a lot of students, I think, here this week, or for a few weeks, it sounds like, actually working on the site and working on the dig. What is your role with them? What are you doing, to both help them, I guess, within the classroom, but also within the field?
I am really enjoying working with the students here and in the field. One of my biggest jobs over the course of this field school has been camp chef. So one of the things that I have been doing to take a bit of a load off Dr. Pearsons is preparing breakfasts and dinners every day.
Yes.
But in addition to that, while I'm doing my own research, I am showing some of the students how to do fossil preparation, how to use our big dissecting microscope to take good images of microfossils.
Okay.
I have been working in the field running the Lord Clive quarry while we try and pull more of this particular dinosaur out of the hillside. And so Dr. Pearsons has left me with certain students throughout the day.
Nice.
So that I can work with them and show them what we're looking for and sort of supervise while we try and get some more of this guy out. So I've really enjoyed working with the students here. Having been, a student myself not that long ago, I had dug at the Lord Clive quarry as a student and been shown the ropes. And so coming out here, having that experience under my belt, I was able to do the same for these guys.
That's great. And so your journey within school was a little different. You did not start in paleontology. Tell us a little bit about that.
I did not start in paleontology. I started in classics. I declared my major my first semester. I felt like I really knew what I was doing. I was very excited about it. I was able to take Latin all 4 years through high school, and I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed language learning. So I came to the College of Charleston, and I focused really heavily on classics. I was very involved in the department. I was in the classics club. I was the treasurer. I was taking ancient Greek and Latin and doing extracurriculars with the department, and I really enjoyed it. But I knew that I didn't want to limit myself strictly to the classroom, that I wanted to be a little bit more involved. And so I started thinking about classical archaeology as opposed to classical philology, which is the study of classical language development, and where I started. So I transitioned from philology to archaeology, thinking that I just wanted to work more with my hands, be a little more active outside of sort of a classroom and research environment. And then with that in mind, I started taking geology as my required science. And I loved it.
Picked up an interest. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I also then pretty quickly started working in the geology department as a TA, assisting with teaching the introductory geology labs. So environmental processes and then earth history labs. And I really enjoyed that. And then I moved on. I started TAing some lectures. I started tutoring geology. And I took a couple of Dr. Pearsons classes. So Age of Dinosaurs and then paleobiology. And I really enjoyed them. And so I decided to add geology as a second major and get a BS as well as a BA. And with a BS at the College of Charleston, you have to take a field school. And for that, I was able to come out here for the first time in summer of 2022. And I was out here for 3 weeks as a student, doing a lot of the same stuff that I am now, but all for the first time. It was all brand new. And this was my introduction to sort of academia outside the classroom. Doing a lot of learning, a lot of intense thinking and intense research, while also getting to be outside and doing some manual labor, but also, being able to see what I'm working with and where it comes from.
It's powerful. It's powerful.
Very.
Tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here. I mean, speaking of the power of it, I think there's been some things that both have recently come off the hillside here, and Glen Rock, but bringing, it actually within your lab here. Tell us a little bit about what we're looking at.
So this right here is one of the things that came out of the hillside this year. This came out just a few days ago, which is why it is still partially encased in a plaster jacket. So I've just recently pulled some of the overlying rock off of this surface of the bone, and this is a section of the pelvic shield of a nodosaur, which is a kind of armored dinosaur, a kind of ankylosaur.
Yeah, you can almost see it there.
You can see each of these big bumps and lumps is an individual osteoderm or scoot. These are bones that grow within the surface of the skin, and in the case of this pelvic shield, those bones have fused together to form one sort of complete surface. And so over the top of this, there would have been a sort of keratinous sheath, same stuff that our fingernails and hair are made out of, that would have had little spikes on each of this, making it a very unfriendly bite for a tyrannosaur.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and this kind of speaks to, we were talking earlier about the analog, right? And when we talk about the modern STEM classroom, and obviously being a technologist, right, that means a lot of different things. And this is a very different field in a very important way. That it sounds like as you were making that change from the classics to geology, and maybe got your first opportunity to go out into the field, research in academia was interesting, but also I'm imagining getting hands-on out here. Speak for a second about the
the importance of that. There might be technology used in the field, but the analog and being able to actually get out there and use your hands, it's important for STEM learning. Talk for a moment about that.
Absolutely. It's incredibly important. For me, I think what really drove paleontology home, what really made this specifically, what brought it so close to my heart, what established this as what I want to do, was coming out into the field for the first time. So I had done some research, I had done the classroom learning, and I'd enjoyed it very genuinely. But coming out here and getting to take a project all the way from the start, to see where this stuff is coming from and how we find it, and dig it out with my hands and pull it out of the dirt and the rock and then piece it back together, and try and figure out what exactly is going on and what it means and how much that can tell us. Being able to be a part of the complete process like that just really opened my eyes to a whole nother side of paleontology as a science. I like reading about dinosaurs. I like learning about dinosaurs. I like hearing about things that other people have done, their own expeditions. But I also really like digging.
Can't really do that in a classroom.
Can't do that in a classroom, no, absolutely not.
Well, so let's do the flip side of that coin then. So there's the analog, but it sounds like technology is playing a bit of a role in the field as well. Talk to us about some of the technologies that you all are using out there on the sites today. Yeah,
technology is becoming increasingly important for what we do as paleontologists working in the field. Right now for the field school, one of Dr. Pearson's graduate students is doing a project using a drone to map the property on which this rock is exposed. So what he is doing is flying his drone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth across different sections of the ranch, taking a lot of pictures, and then he is going to be piecing those together to create a map that is both stratigraphic and topographic, and will also have all of our known field sites, all of our known dinosaur quarries marked as points on that. And so that'll help us keep track of where we've been and maybe help us figure out where we need to go next.
Well, I'm just genuinely curious too. I mean, we're out there and there's 30 mile an hour winds. Erosion is a thing out in this kind of environment. So I'd imagine having that footage before and after over time too, you're going to be able to see some of that.
Absolutely, yeah. In 5 or 10 years, we're probably going to need to redo the whole thing. Because of how much the landscape will have changed. But it's fantastic to be able to do that because we've been working with the Paleon Museum, and they've been digging on this particular ranch for 30 years now. And so if we could see what the hillside looks like, where they were digging, where they were finding things 30 years ago, that would be some really great information to have.
Yes, it would. And so there's some unique things about Glen Rock, but there's, I guess, a T-Rex trackway that is somewhere nearby. And
there is.
How does technology play? Let's talk about that in general because that's super cool.
It is very cool.
But I've seen some of the the 3D scanning and printing that you all were doing for some of those tracks and footprints. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the trackway is very exciting. It's very cool, and really that's the best word for it. It is just so incredibly cool.
And one of a few, right?
Yes. There are not a lot of Tyrannosaur trackways, and this one right here in Glen Rock, Wyoming is actually the longest in the world.
Wow.
The most tracks. And so we've got a whole left, right, left, right, left, right series. And one of the tracks, the best preserved, you can see the heel pad and the impressions of the toe pad and then the impressions of the individual talons on each claw, and it's just incredible to see. And, of course, this being a big animal, taking big steps, the trackway itself is a huge slab of iron sandstone. And it is going to stay where it is forever.
Not going to go anywhere.
It's not going to go anywhere. We can't dig that out. It's just not possible. So with 3D scanning technology, with some aerial imaging done via drones and scanning, that way, as well as with a handheld scanner to get some more detailed renderings, we are able to print casts, replicas of this trackway at full scale.
Using a 3D printer?
Yes.
And previously, I guess, in I'll call it the analog world, but I mean, you all would have to kind of fill up and make a molding or a cast and maybe not compromise, but, you know, imagine it's different than how it used to be, right?
Very much, yes. So we would have had to fill the track itself with plaster and then pull that out. And when you do that, you are risking pulling out a little bit of the rock with it and removing some of the detail of that incredible preservation. And then we would have had to take those molds of the tracks and use that to, we'd have to take each individual track mold and measure them and space them exactly how they're spaced on the actual thing in the field, and then do a whole sequence of casts in order to be able to see the real thing. So using this 3D scanning and 3D printing technology, we are able to not only, for the sake of the site itself, preserve its integrity, but also increase the accessibility.
That's great. That's great. So a question I ask everybody, what was that spark for you? It sounds like you had an interesting education early on, but you know, were there certain moments or things that you recall, educators or things that you got involved in that was your spark, not just to go down paleontology, we've talked about that, but yes, STEM field in general? Yeah,
my goodness, absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually started off as a very sort of humanities heavy kind of person. I was very bookish. And I got told a little bit that you had to pick one or the other. And so I thought, okay, well, I really like reading. I'm good at reading, so I'll stick with the humanities side and leave the STEM for the people who are a little better at math than I am. But, you know, of course, that's not true at all. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can do both. And really, I think you need to be able to do both. So for me, funnily enough, a lot of what sparked my interest in science was reading. Reading about work that other people had done, how far we've come in this field or that field. I found that really fascinating. I read pretty much everything I could get my hands on. And I also watched a lot of more educational stuff. Like I remember picking up the Eyewitness VHS tapes from the public library and bringing them home and watching them like 4 times in a row, just because I was fascinated and I loved, you know, learning as much as I could. I just wanted to be saturated. So I read really everything I could get my hands on.
Well, that's great. That seems to be a big connection, right? And the sparking a lot of interest for some young people. One last question. I mean, for the young people out there, for students, for young ladies out there interested in getting into the science, what would be kind of your central message in them kind of finding their own STEM path and their own interest?
Finding something that gets me excited. Find something that I care about, that I want to learn about. When I was taking dinosaur classes at the College of Charleston, I liked doing my homework. I liked learning about this stuff. I found it so invigorating and fascinating. And, you know, once I found that out, once I learned that this was something that I was really just curious about, passionately curious, I started to work really hard to find ways to keep learning about it. And so for me, that meant looking for opportunities to do some independent research. I did independent studies. I'm working on a publication. This is my 3rd year out here. I came for field school and then I came back for a research trip. So my central message would be find out what drives you, what you want to learn about, and then seek out every possible opportunity to learn more about that, and find people, good educators, mentors, who are just as excited as you are, because those are the people that are gonna help you get where you want to go.
Certainly, and it takes some initiative, right?
It does.
You get that interest and be able to take that next step, or be able to reach out to that teacher and look for those new opportunities. And it sounds like that's helped really pave the way for you.
Absolutely.
All right, Juliet, I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
This was such a great opportunity to learn and see behind the scenes in a different scientific field of study like paleontology, and hopefully give you an idea at some of the things and people that you'll have the opportunity to meet this year at STEAMFest. Again, Saturday, November 2nd, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the Orion Amphitheater right here in Huntsville. Thanks again to Joe, Dr. Pearsons, and Juliet for joining us, letting us tell their story, and helping show STEM in action. Please check out the description of this episode for links to learn more about STEAMFest and alabamascience.org. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe and share with others to continue connecting STEM across your communities. Thanks again for listening to Incubate Talent and helping build your STEM ecosystem.